As the elimination of Syria's chemical arsenals steams ahead, the US is now warning of a new threat from the Assad government. America's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, claims Damascus may have the capabilities to produce biological weapons. RTs Marina Portnaya joins me live now with more details on this. Marina, just how advanced is then this technology according to Clapper?
Well, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence claims that Syria has not successfully weaponized biological agents in an effective delivery system, but he says that the government possesses conventional weapon systems that could be used to launch biological weapons. Now, speaking to the Senate Intelligence Committee, James Clapper said that America's spy agencies believe that some elements of Syria's biological warfare program might have advanced beyond the research and development stage and might be capable of limited agent production. Now, the timing of these comments are quite interesting. You have to understand them in context. Mr. Clapper is making these allegations as Damascus has been successfully complying with a Russia-U.S. brokered deal to remove and destroy its arsenal of chemical weapons. The agreement was brokered as a way to avert U.S. missile strikes that President Obama was threatening in September to carry out. Now it looks as though the U.S. administration may have a new reason to revisit their military playbook.
And what other Syrian threats did Clapper point out?
Well, Mr. Clapper is warning that Syrian militant groups tied to al-qaeda, such as the al-Nusra Front, is aspiring to attack the United States. He told the Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday that extremist groups in Syria are conducting training camps to train people to go back to their countries and conduct more terrorist acts. Clapper says that some 26,000 rebel fighters battling the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria are extremists, and he also estimates that 7,000 of them are from 50 different countries, including Europe. Now, with all due respect to Mr. Clapper, this is not a huge revelation. We've been reporting for months about how an influx of extremist groups in Syria has turned the war-torn country into a terrorist training center. Now, the U.S. is currently facing quite a conundrum because the al-Qaeda members fighting with the rebels may pose a greater threat to American interests than the Syrian president Washington wants removed.
Live from New York, RTs Marina Portnaya. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now let's cross over to our studios in Washington. And Brian Becker, anti-war activist, joins us live from there. Brian, does Clapper's remark on a potential biological arsenal open a new diplomatic problem for Syria, similar to the one we saw concerning the chemical weapons?
Well, it's a clear indication that the Obama administration is looking for other rationales, other pretexts to keep the pressure on the Assad government. And when I say pressure, that's kind of euphemistic. What they're really doing, of course, is creating a great international crime by funneling arms and weapons and money to an armed struggle. In other words, fomenting civil war so that they can destroy an independent nationalist government in this region of the world. Yes, they need rationales. They can't say, well, we really want to overthrow the Assad government because we want a puppet proxy regime in Syria. So they have to say, well, we're doing all of this for other reasons. And the other reasons are always some noble cause, fighting terrorism, fighting chemical weapons, now fighting biological weapons. But beneath it all is the real driving force of U.S. policy, which is to rule the roost in this resource-rich part of the world.
Of course, chemical weapons of mass destruction, not only in Syria but also in Iraq, were used as a pretext for military intervention. Are you really saying that this could be an excuse for something like that again?
I would suggest that everyone should consider this to be another false flag, another pretext, a rationale, an excuse to carry out U.S. policy, which I consider to be a criminal policy because it's fomenting armed struggle in a nation that the United States is technically not at war with. And
yet Assad's regime is proved to have had chemical weapons because they're removing them from the country now. Why not the biological threat then? Is that not a valid accusation?
Well, you know, even the U.S. government says these are not weaponized components for biological weapons, that they're in the research and development thing. We've gone through this script before. We saw it in Iraq. We saw it in Libya. We're seeing it in Syria. It doesn't mean that weapons of mass destruction don't exist. But what I'm saying is the United States government is carrying out an armed struggle policy, a civil war policy, and they need to keep up public rationales. Also, they need a way to balance against Geneva. They need to find a way to continue to demonize the Assad government, because their ultimate goal is to get rid of Assad, not for a negotiated settlement.
And Clapper also expressed deep concern over terrorism being spawned in Syria, but of course becoming a threat elsewhere in the US and in Europe. Is that really a cause for concern?
Well, I think we have there two intertangled agendas. The NSA and the U.S. intelligence agencies need enemies, and they need enemies because the Snowden revelations show they're actually spying on the American people and the people of the world. So they need an al-qaeda threat force. But at the same time, the U.S. has been the one funneling the arms to the armed opposition, which in effect is strengthening al-qaeda, just as they did in Afghanistan in 1979. Osama bin Laden was the precursor to al-qaeda then, and the U.S. CIA supported him. They play it both ways.
Brian, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for your perspective on this. Live from Washington.
Thanks.
Brian Becker.